All right, today we are unpacking one of the most tangled and disturbing stories of our time, the case of Jeffrey Epstein. And this is so much bigger than just one man. It's really about this massive web of power, of wealth, and secrets that goes all the way to the top. It really makes you ask, how on earth did this go on for so long?
So you might think we'd start at the beginning, but no. This story really kicks off at the end. We're talking August 10th, 2019, inside a maximum security jail cell. A death that, honestly, just opened up a whole new can of worms and kicked off a firestorm of speculation that is still raging today.
Okay, so on paper, the official report calls it a suicide. But the circumstances around it were, let's just say, bizarre. The security cameras right outside his cell? Yeah, they supposedly malfunctioned. The guards who were meant to be checking on him? They fell asleep. And get this, he had just been taken off suicide watch. All these weird coincidences fueled this huge theory that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. He was silenced. And to understand why so many people believe that, you really have to go back to the beginning.
To even begin to unpack the mystery of his death, you have to understand the enigma of his life. So who exactly was this guy, Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, you might be surprised to hear, he actually started out as a math teacher in the 70s. But he very quickly found his way to Wall Street. And there, with this unique mix of being brilliant with money and just incredibly charming, he got in with billionaires. He started managing their massive fortunes, and along the way, built an absolutely staggering empire of wealth and influence for himself.
And when I say his wealth was staggering, I mean it's almost hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about owning the largest private home in all of Manhattan, a 75,000-acre ranch out in New Mexico, a luxury pad in Paris, and of course, his own private Boeing 727, which got that infamous nickname, the Lolita Express. But the real dark center of this whole empire was a private island he owned in the Caribbean.
Officially, the island is called Little St. James, but it pretty quickly became known as Epstein Island. And let me tell you, this was no simple vacation spot. As we'd later learn from victims and investigations, this place was meticulously set up to be the hub for his whole criminal operation, far, far away from any prying eyes.
But here's the thing you have to understand. Epstein's real power wasn't just his money. It was his access. It was his incredible connections to the global elite that gave him this feeling of being completely untouchable.
And the list of names in his circle, it's literally a who's who of global power. Former President Bill Clinton flew on his private jet, reportedly dozens of times. Donald Trump was a friend back in the 90s. Britain's Prince Andrew was so deeply connected to one of Epstein's victims that it cost him his royal duties. Even tech giants like Bill Gates were in his social orbit. These weren't just casual friends. They gave him legitimacy. And maybe they gave him protection.
And that leads to this huge, lingering question. When the FBI finally raided his Manhattan mansion, they found a safe filled with CDs and photos. So, were these powerful people just his friends? Or was there something much, much darker going on? Was Epstein secretly recording his guests as a form of blackmail? You know, like an insurance policy? That's a question that still hangs over this entire case.
Because behind that glittering facade, the private jets and the powerful friends, was a truly horrific, systematic machine of abuse.
And look, he was not doing this alone, not by a long shot. At the center of it all was Epstein, yes, but he had a key partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was his longtime girlfriend and confidant, and prosecutors argued that she was the chief recruiter, using her own high society status to lure vulnerable and often underage girls into their world with all these false promises of money and a better life.
I mean, these crimes went on for years, totally shrouded in silence and protected by power. And the first crack in that wall of silence, it didn't come from a big police investigation. It came from the unbelievable courage of one single person.
So back in 2005, a victim named Courtney Wild filed the very first police report. But the path to any kind of justice was just agonizingly long. In 2008, even with evidence piling up from dozens of victims, Epstein got this secret, unbelievably lenient plea deal that let him avoid federal charges. For a whole decade, the case just went cold, until an investigative journalist, Julie K. Brown, exposed the whole sordid deal. That sparked a massive public outcry that finally led to his rearrest in 2019. And the result of that 2008 deal? Instead of facing life in prison, Epstein served just 13 months. 13 in a county jail. And it was hardly what you'd call hard time.
He had work release, which let him leave the jail for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to go to his office. Unbelievable.
So, when Epstein died in that jail cell in 2019, you might think, okay, story's over. But not at all. In fact, his death just ignited this whole new, urgent chapter, focused on his accomplices and all the secrets he left behind.
His closest partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, couldn't escape. She was arrested in 2020, and at her trial, victims gave this absolutely harrowing testimony, painting her as a key mastermind of the whole network. In the end, she was convicted, and right now, she's serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison.
In the aftermath, a compensation fund was set up using Epstein's estate. It's paid out over $121 million to more than 150 survivors. And while, no amount of money can ever undo that kind of trauma, it is at least some kind of long overdue acknowledgement of what they went through.
So now, the fight for accountability has really become a fight for transparency. The big focus is on the slow, court-ordered release of thousands and thousands of pages of documents tied to this case, documents that we've all come to know as the Epstein Files.
Now, thousands of pages have already come out, revealing new names and all sorts of sordid details. But what we've seen so far, it might just be the tip of the iceberg. It's believed there could be over 1 million pages of documents related to this case that are still sealed, totally hidden from public view.
If there's one thing this whole awful saga shows us, it's a really powerful truth, that even the most sophisticated systems of wealth and influence, the ones designed to protect the guilty and silence victims, they're not invincible. They can be challenged, and sometimes they can be dismantled by the persistent voices of people who just refuse to give up on demanding justice.
So yeah, this story is far from over. And with that massive trove of sealed documents still out there, it leaves us all with one final and really deeply unsettling question. In a case that was built on secrets, what other truths? And what other powerful names are still buried in the dark?